A piece by Andy Olson in Christianity Today reports that President Trump's illegal immigration crackdown could deport up to 10 million Christians, including pastors like Eduardo Martirano, and claims that this may harm American churches. It's the opinion of this show that while such emotional appeals are powerful, the arguments are flawed. U.S. immigration law applies universally. Faith affiliation does not grant immunity from legal accountability. Suggesting deporting those who broke immigration laws as anti-Christian politicizes both law enforcement and the gospel. Christian witness thrives under hardship, not exemption. If churches rely on illegal residency to function, that reflects institutional fragility, not federal malice. Compassion must not override sovereignty, nor should selective outrage distort lawful national policy. J.D. Vance has been asked about this topic, and he has stated that this appeal to Christians' emotions on the issue of mass illegal immigrations is a dog whistle used to manipulate the conversation about the problems at our southern border. Here he was on Hannity.
But there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership, and President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first.
To respond to all of this, we bring in a special guest. He's pastor, speaker, and author of the book, It Was Never About Justice, Michael Morisi. Michael, I'm very curious about your take on this. I mean, you also have a law enforcement background, 10 years in law enforcement. You're a pastor. I mean, you come at this with a very interesting take, and I'm curious about your reaction to this trend we're seeing in the Christian movement.
Well, thank you, Chanel, first for having me on today. I appreciate it. I read the Christianity Today article, and I don't particularly like the slant that they put on it because they're appealing to an emotional thing. A lot of immigration is certainly a controversial issue in our country, but you opened by saying exactly what I believe, and that is, the Bible is very clear about us obeying the laws that the government establish. In Acts 17, God establishes boundaries for each nation. Those boundaries have to be protected and respected. And in Romans 13, he makes it very clear that he expects us to obey all the laws of the government, even the ones that we don't particularly care for. So if someone is in our country illegally, they're breaking our laws, Christian or otherwise, I think that what's happening right now is actually a good thing, because over the last decade or so, we have just allowed too much open border access to our nation, and it is hurting Americans.
As a faith leader in your community, you work closely with Governor Glenn Youngkin out of Virginia and Winsome Sears. I know you do a lot of work with leaders, thought leaders and policy leaders on both sides. And I'm curious what you're seeing in the trends in terms of, as you're interacting with people today, where we are as a nation in our journey to or from faith. It seems the polling numbers show that it's not a great picture. Not a lot of people are coming to the faith. What are you seeing on the ground?
Well, you're right. We have seen since the COVID shutdown of all the churches, we have seen people who have made a decision that church isn't as relevant for them anymore, and therefore faith isn't. I think a lot of that is a result of, for lack of a better way to put it, weak pulpits across the nation. I think pastors in many cases have become more entertainers, more motivational speakers, and a lot of pastors will say to me, well, I have to preach a message that is comfortable for Republicans and Democrats. Well, I don't believe that when God established the church, he established it thinking that we would have Republicans and Democrats in our church. I think he thought we would have his flock, and he would bring them to us so that we could shepherd them. And sometimes you shepherd people, well, you always should shepherd people in truth. And sometimes truth comes across as offensive, but the Bible tells us that that is conviction, and conviction comes out of our love for people so that they will know the truth. And we are seeing, you know, a resurgence, I think, of people who are now kind of tired of the hate and the bigoted and the battles that are going on in our culture, and they're starting to return to faith, especially young people. The idea here in Virginia is that we have leadership in both Governor Youngkin and Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, who we hope will be our next governor, who honor God with the decisions that they make. They love the Lord, and they operate that way. And I think that benefits all people, whether you're a follower of faith or not.
Yeah, no, well, the faith of leadership has a huge effect. I mean, look at J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a devout Catholic. He has come to the Catholic faith, and he has been unafraid to talk about his faith. And the more you see people like that speaking out, preaching the gospel and preaching the goodness of our Lord Jesus Christ, it's a contagious act almost. It's when you see people who are at that high a level, because we've trained society to say, well, the higher you go, the more you have to appeal to the extremely broad base. But when you hear someone like J.D. Vance then lob this incredible criticism on, say, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, they were criticized for accepting over $100 million in federal funds to aid undocumented immigrants, asking, whether they are actually worried about their bottom line, and urged them, J.D. Vance did, urged them to look in the mirror, spotlighting the deep ideological divisions that are happening within the church. How do you see that entire game playing out?
Well, I think he was 100% right, and I'm thrilled that we have someone who puts his faith first. That's what we as Christians are called to do. We have to recognize, and I think it's very clear that J.D. Vance does, that he is here to serve first God, and then after that, serve the people that God has given him charge over and responsibility for. A lot of the churches, exactly what he said, a lot of the churches do need to stop and take a look in the mirror and say, are we honoring God with everything that we're doing? Because we're supposed to be a witness to those who do not know the Lord, so that they will feel drawn to know him more. And so it's our behavior that allows us to be a witness.
There's so much to your backstory, and full disclosure to our audience, I was first introduced to your story at a law school lecture, and your testament is so extraordinary because you talk about your journey through a legal system, not even through the faith system, not even through any of these other systems we're talking about. You had your own travails with the legal system and the politicization of it, the power dynamics that make our current legal system very fundamentally unjust for the common man. And I'm curious as to your take, and I urge our audience to read your book. It's an incredible testament to that story. But as you walk away from an experience like what you have had to go through, is there light on the end of the tunnel when it comes to fundamentally changing these systems? You have big church, you have big law, you have big tech. All of these forces are playing against us as a society every single day, and playing against our faith. Where's that light at the end of the tunnel? Is it through the individual? Is it the institution? Where do we find the light?
Well, I think very similar to the immigration system in America, the federal criminal justice system is equally broken. And what we have seen happen over the last several decades is just this bureaucracy being built in these government organizations that have caused them, I think, in many cases, to lose their focus on what their responsibilities were. Today, Chanel, there are over 300,000 federal statutes that you can violate and spend 10 years in prison for. 300,000. There was a book I read not too long ago, and it said 3 felonies a day. And it says that virtually every American commits 3 federal felonies every single day and doesn't even realize it. What ended up happening to me is the federal government can come in, and if you have an aggressive prosecutor who's looking for a high-profile opportunity in order to benefit himself in his career, he can basically find something to charge you with any day of the week. And that's not the way the
and
criminal
bully
justice
the
system
whole
was.
system to follow his lead.
Absolutely. And I saw that so clearly in mine. And just recently in another hearing, I watched attorneys who are petrified of this particular prosecutor and literally said things that were completely contrary to what they had said in deposition and in conversations previous, because they're afraid of the ramifications of not going along with him. The court system today it's broken. I mean, we represent 5% of the nation, of the world's population, and 26% of those incarcerated in the world. So there's a problem with that.
Wow. It's an incredible story in the sense that it is kind of a blueprint for what's also happening in other sectors of society, not just our judicial system, but it's terrifying to see it play out like that in our judicial system and now in our churches, where you see all these different forces playing and bullying us away from what's right. Michael Morisi, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Chanel. I appreciate you inviting me on. God bless you.
God bless. Coming up, Libby Emmons takes a spin on Headline Roulette. Stay right here. We'll be right back.